My name is Tia, and my OCD makes me ask scary what-if questions every day. The first time I consider having done a compulsion was when I was around 3 years old. I grew up very religious, and so I put myself in timeout because I didn't think I was good enough for anything, but also for God. I felt that I needed to feel guilty and needed to feel shame for all the things I could be doing better. And again, this is when I was a toddler, so there was nothing I really could have been doing better, but I put myself in timeout, and it felt like it lasted hours. Maybe it was only a couple minutes, but I just remember that feeling. And that's a feeling that stuck around through a lot of my different OCD themes. My OCD, from that toddler age started to grow and progress, grabbing onto more and more areas of my life until it reached a point where I just was no longer really functioning. I remember in high school, I went and was driving on the road and I slid off because there was icy conditions in Utah. And I turned around, parked my car, went back and started chiseling away at the ice in the road. And my hands were numb, it's freezing. There were 2 cars that came within inches of hitting my body. But I just felt so responsible for other people on the road. What if someone else slid off the road? It was my fault that they got hurt. I started knocking on doors. Again, this is like late in the night, knocking on doors, asking, does anyone have salt? Does anyone have like something I can use to chip away at this ice? And I just remember feeling this was not normal. This had reached a level that had started to cause really severe impairment. Before, I kind of thought that I was just quirky, I just did these things, and I kind of thought everyone else did too. I even took pride in some of the way I was so scrupulous about my religion. I was such a good kid, but it wasn't until that day that I realized something was seriously wrong. And from there, it progressed, getting deeper and deeper until I wasn't really able to function, leaving my apartment or showering or any of those basic activities of daily living just felt really out of reach, and I felt really broken. When I was in college is when it really hit that peak for me, that I was just, again, not functioning. And I remember talking to my dad and just saying, why is it that I can't seem to do the same things my peers can do? Why is it that these basic tasks like cleaning my room feel so out of reach? Why is it that I feel this way? What's wrong with me? And for some reason, something clicked in my brain, and I had the thought, this is OCD. And that's something I'd heard other people say before. I had a therapist who had wrote it up on the whiteboard as one of my potential diagnoses and then erased it in the past. It had been something that had been talked about a little bit, but never confirmed. But in that moment, I knew I wanted to investigate it a little bit more. And so I started researching. I went online and looked up what's the most effective treatment, and I got this workbook, and I was going down the list of the most common obsessions and compulsions, the ways that this showed up for other people, and I just remember sobbing and feeling like maybe I wasn't broken, maybe there's a reason that I'm doing these things, and if so, maybe there's hope, maybe there's something I can do about it. And so I immediately found an exposure and response prevention program and enrolled myself and got going and was able to get that diagnosis. And I did 4 months of intensive outpatient program at that clinic and experienced a huge reduction in my symptoms. So I do a lot of advocacy work now, and as part of that, a lot of the times people ask me, how is it that you're able to do this without your OCD grabbing onto it? And the truth is I'm not. My OCD is still there. I kind of like to consider it like a little backseat driver. Before, OCD was driving my car and I was along for the ride, and now OCD is this obnoxious little toddler in the backseat, kicks my chair, tells me which way to go, but at the end of the day, it doesn't get to touch the wheel. I'm not going to stop my trip and I'm gonna go where I want. And so I still have questions all the time, am I doing this advocacy right? What if, I hurt someone's feelings as I'm doing this? What if I cause harm to someone who's experiencing OCD? What if I say the wrong thing or show up in the wrong way or lose financial security from doing this advocacy work, right? There's so many questions that come up to my brain, so many thoughts OCD throws my way, but I don't interact with them the same way I used to. I just push a little bit harder and keep doing the opposite of what OCD wants me to, even when it feels really loud and really obnoxious. Growing up in Mormon, Utah, a lot of my OCD was praised. It was seen as this really admirable trait. The fact that I was spending 5 hours a day reading scripture, or spending every second of every day praying, or being so kind to other people, going out of my way to help them, or getting perfect grades. All of these things were seen as really beautiful traits, but they didn't see the fear and the shame underneath it. They just saw the outcome. They didn't see all of the nights I would spend crying because I felt broken. All of the times that even doing 100% wasn't enough for my OCD. There was always just one more thing I should have done. They didn't see the way those shoulds were consuming me. And so I think one of the trickiest parts of this journey was watching other people praise me for the things that made me feel so alone. And when I was able to go through treatment, some people thought I was doing the wrong thing, that I was going to become a worse person through this. And that was a real concern of mine as I went through this process. I reached this point where I wasn't leaving my apartment because what if I said a slur to someone? What if I swore at someone on the street? That was a concern of mine, even though that was not in my nature. It wasn't something that I had planned to do. That's what my OCD told me I would do if I left the house. And so for me to go to ERP therapy, where I'm out there practicing swearing, practicing, leaning into my distress like this, I was very concerned that I would just turn into this person who would curse like a sailor, just go out and cuss out the world, right? But at the end of the day, all I got was my agency. I now get to choose if I would like to cuss someone out on the street. It's not something I have to do. Or I'm so scared of what would happen if I did that I'm not leaving my house. I get to choose if I would like to engage in religious things and not just sit there scared of what would happen if I don't. And I think that's a piece that I wish more people saw, was just the freedom of choice that I regained, and the fact that I'm able now to choose things that are values consistently, whereas before I felt really shamed and scared to choose anything besides my OCD. I remember walking in the first day to my ERP treatment and seeing on the wall this sign that said "Live Uncertain." And I thought that was so rude, and I complained to the center and told them they should take that sign down because it was so insensitive to have a sign all about uncertainty for people who have such a hard time accepting it. But at the end of the day, that's what I gained. There is uncertainty in the world. And so that used to give me so much fear, and now it just gives me hope, because with all the what if something bad happened is what if something good happens? And, what if you can get better? There's just as much good uncertainty as there is bad. And so I think what's most hopeful to me is not this ideal world OCD created for me that was completely without any pain, any suffering. I just was going to be so protected and safe 24/7. What gives me a whole lot more hope is knowing that I can handle any distress that comes my way. That when I get a flat tire or when something just happens in life, I have the tools to face that. And that gives me far more hope than any sort of certain world ever could. New research is everything when it comes to treating and understanding OCD. There are so many misconceptions about what it is and what it isn't, and so every time we're able to get some sort of new research out there, it helps people to understand themselves if that's what they're experiencing, and also understand others. For people who don't have OCD, to get more of a glimpse into what's going on in our brains is incredibly validating and so important when it comes to helping people recover. Because of my OCD, my brain loves to throw scary what-if questions my way each and every day. But what if you're not alone? And what if research brings hope?